The wedding was supposed to be small and private, just Katie, Tameen, Juno, and her mother in her final days. Katie stood in a simple white dress, holding Juno's hand as the officiant began the ceremony in the hospital chapel. Her mother watched from her wheelchair, tears of joy streaming down her face. Tameen looked at Katie like she was his entire world, and for one perfect moment, everything felt right. Then the chapel doors burst open with a thunderous crash, and a man Katie had only seen in photographs, a man who was supposed to be dead, strode down the aisle with 10 armed men behind him. Tameen's face went white as a ghost. "Hello, son," the man said with a cruel smile, his voice echoing through the stunned silence. "Did you really think you could betray the family and live happily ever after?" Katie immediately pulled Juno close, shielding his eyes as Tameen's father, the legendary crime lord everyone called the Wolf, surveyed the room with cold calculation. "You want to play house? Fine. But first, we need to discuss the empire you abandoned and the price of your betrayal. If you thought part 1 was intense, you haven't seen anything yet. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications because part 2 is about to get insane. Drop a like if you're ready for this. Now let's dive in." Tameen moved immediately to stand between his father and his family, his voice steady despite the shock radiating through his body. "Father, you're supposed to be dead. The car accident, the funeral, I mourned you." The Wolf laughed, a sound that made Katie's skin crawl as she quickly whispered to the hospital security guard to take Juno to her mother's room, away from whatever was about to happen. She watched her son leave safely before turning back to face the monster who'd just destroyed their perfect moment. "You mourned a convenient fiction," the Wolf said, his eyes never leaving Tameen. "I staged my death to see what you'd do with your freedom, to see if you were truly worthy of leading our family. Instead, I find you here, about to marry some nobody and abandon everything I built." His cold gaze finally landed on Katie, examining her with obvious disapproval. "A Black American woman with no family connections, no power, no value to our organization. This is what you chose over your birthright." Katie felt rage burn through her fear, and despite Tameen's warning hand on her arm, she stepped forward with her chin raised high. "I may not have your connections or your blood money, but I have something you clearly never gave your son. Real love and a chance at happiness." The Wolf's eyebrow raised, and for a moment, something almost like respect flickered in his eyes before it vanished. "Bold. Foolish, but bold," he said, then turned back to Tameen. "Here's my offer, and it's non-negotiable. You return to the family business immediately. You take over the operations I've been secretly managing from the shadows. You become the leader you were born to be." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Send this woman back to America tonight. Forget this fantasy of domestic life, and I'll ensure she and the child are financially secured for life. Millions in an untouchable account. Refuse me, and I'll use every resource at my disposal to destroy the legitimate businesses you've built, leaving you with nothing but the criminal empire you're trying to escape. The choice is yours, son, but choose quickly. My patience has limits." Tameen faces an impossible choice, his family or everything he's built. What will he decide? The silence in the chapel was suffocating as everyone waited for Tameen's answer, and Katie felt her heart breaking as she watched the war raging behind his eyes. She knew what his legitimate businesses meant to him. The hotels, the real estate companies, the tech investments, they were his path out of the darkness, his way of building something clean for their future. If his father destroyed them, Tameen would be trapped in the criminal world forever, and everything they'd dreamed of would turn to ash. "I need time to think," Tameen finally said, his voice hoarse, and Katie felt like she'd been stabbed. He wouldn't even look at her, and that hurt more than anything. The Wolf smiled, clearly expecting this reaction. "You have 24 hours. Tomorrow at sunset, you'll give me your answer at the old warehouse where I first taught you about our business. Come alone, or the deal is off." He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Katie with something almost like pity. "For what it's worth, young lady, you seem like a good woman. In another life, in another family, maybe this could have worked. But we don't get to choose the families we're born into, and some legacies are written in blood that can't be washed away." After the Wolf and his men left, the chapel remained frozen in shocked silence until Katie's mother began to sob quietly in her wheelchair. Katie stood there in her wedding dress, feeling like a fool, watching as Tameen finally turned to face her with tears streaming down his face. "Katie, he started, but she held up her hand to stop him, her own tears falling freely now. "Don't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't tell me you're actually considering this. Don't tell me that after everything we've been through, after all your promises, you're thinking about sending us away. Taming crossed to her in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders desperately. If I don't do what he wants, he'll destroy everything. Every legitimate business, every legal pathway out of this life, gone. I'll be trapped in the darkness forever. And what kind of life is that for you and Juno? Katie saw the anguish in his eyes, but she also saw something else, fear, and maybe the smallest hint of resignation. So you'd rather we live apart with blood money than together and poor? She asked, her voice steady now despite her breaking heart. You'd rather Juno grow up without his father, knowing his dad chose power over love? The question hung between them like a chasm neither knew how to cross, and in that moment, Katie realized that the wolf had already won. He'd planted a seed of doubt that was tearing them apart from the inside. Katie and Taming's love is being tested like never before. But someone has been listening to everything, and they have a plan that will change the game completely. Katie spent the rest of the day in her mother's hospital room, holding Juno while he napped, trying to process the nightmare her wedding had become. Taming had left hours ago, saying he needed to think, and every minute without him felt like a small death. Her mother, weak but clear-headed, reached for Katie's hand. "Baby girl, I need to tell you something about the wolf that might help," she whispered, her voice urgent despite her frailty. "When I lived in Seoul all these years, I wasn't just teaching English. I made friends, heard stories. The wolf has a weakness, a secret so big that if exposed, his entire empire would crumble and every crime family in Asia would turn on him." Katie sat up straighter, hope flickering in her chest. "What secret, Mom?" But before her mother could answer, the hospital room door opened, and Mr. Choi walked in, his expression grave. Katie tensed, instinctively pulling Juno closer, but Choi raised his hands peacefully. "I'm not here as a threat, Miss Katie. I'm here because I've been tracking the wolf since his death. And I know things about him that even Taming doesn't know." Choi sat down carefully, glancing at Katie's mother who nodded at him with recognition. They'd clearly met before, and Katie realized her mother's friends, in Seoul, included some very connected people. "The wolf isn't as invincible as he pretends," Choi said quietly, pulling out a manila folder thick with documents. 2 years ago, when he staged his death, it wasn't just to test Taming. He was running from someone, a woman named Diana Volkov, a Russian crime boss he betrayed 20 years ago in a deal that got her brother killed. She's been hunting him ever since, and she has proof that the wolf stole millions from a joint operation and framed her family for it. Katie's mind raced as she processed this information. So if we tell this Diana where the wolf is, he'll have bigger problems than controlling his son, Choi finished. But here's the catch. Diana is just as dangerous as the wolf, maybe more so. If we unleash her on him, we risk starting a war that could destroy innocent people, including you and Juno. Katie looked down at her sleeping son, then at her dying mother, then at the folder of evidence that could free Taming from his father's grip. "There has to be another way," she whispered, but even as she said it, she saw Choi shake his head sadly. "Sometimes the only way out of darkness is through more darkness. The question is, are you willing to get your hands dirty to save the man you love?" Katie faces a moral dilemma that could save her family or destroy everything. But while she's deciding, Taming is making a choice of his own, one that will shock everyone. While Katie wrestled with impossible choices at the hospital, Taming sat in his penthouse office across from someone he never thought he'd ask for help. His half-sister, Yuna, the daughter his father had with a Japanese woman 30 years ago and abandoned when she was 5. Yuna had built her own empire in Tokyo, completely separate from the wolf's influence, and she hated their father with a passion that burned hotter than the sun. "So the old monster is alive," Yuna said coldly, sipping her tea with elegant precision. "And now he wants to drag you back into hell while destroying the woman you love." How poetic. Taming leaned forward desperately. "I need your help, Yuna. I know we've never been close. I know father's abandonment of you and your mother is unforgivable. But you're the only person I know who successfully escaped his shadow. Tell me how." Yuna studied her half-brother with calculating eyes, then smiled. A smile that reminded Taming uncomfortably of their father. "I escaped because I had something he wanted more than revenge. Information about his enemies that kept him alive. But I'll help you for a different reason. I'll help you because, unlike him, you're trying to be a good father, and maybe you deserve a chance he never gave us." Yuna pulled out her phone and showed Taming a series of photographs that made his blood run cold. Pictures of the wolf meeting with a corrupt government official, accepting bribes, ordering hits on rivals. "I've been documenting his activities for 20 years, waiting for the right moment to destroy him," she said. "If these go public, he won't just lose his empire, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison." Tamim stared at the evidence, his heart pounding. Why haven't you used this before? Yuna's expression darkened. Because exposing him would also expose you, little brother. His crimes are tied to businesses you inherited, deals you benefited from even if you didn't know about them. If I burn him, you burn too, maybe not as badly, but enough to destroy everything you've built. The truth hit Tamim like a physical blow, and he slumped back in his chair, defeated. So either way, I lose. Either I send Katie and Juno away, or I destroy myself trying to fight him. Yuna reached across and gripped his hand with surprising gentleness. There is a third option, but it requires you to trust me completely and do something that will hurt Katie more than anything. You have to make her believe you've chosen your father over her. You have to break her heart so convincingly that the wolf believes it too. Only then can we execute the real plan. Tamim must pretend to betray Katie to save her. But will she understand when the truth comes out? Meanwhile, Katie has just made contact with Diana Volkov, and the Russian queen is very interested in the wolf's return. Katie's hands trembled as she dialed the number Choi had given her, each ring feeling like a step closer to a point of no return. When a woman's voice answered, smooth, accented, and dangerous as silk wrapped around a blade, Katie almost hung up. This is Diana Volkov. Mr. Choi said you have information about a ghost I've been hunting. Katie swallowed hard, glancing at Juno still sleeping peacefully, unaware his mother was about to make a deal with the devil. The wolf is alive. He's in Seoul, and he's trying to destroy my family. There was a long pause, then Diana laughed, a sound both beautiful and terrifying. Your family? How interesting. Tell me everything, and perhaps we can help each other, miss? Katie. My name is Katie, and I'm engaged to his son. Another pause, longer this time, and Katie could practically hear Diana's mind working through the implications. Even more interesting. The wolf's son fell in love. I didn't think any of that family had hearts. Very well, Katie. I'll be in Seoul by morning. Don't contact the wolf, don't warn anyone, and most importantly, don't tell Tamim. If his father suspects we're coming, he'll disappear again, and I'll lose 20 years of hunting. That night, Katie couldn't sleep, lying in the hospital room's uncomfortable chair, while Juno curled up next to her mother's bed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tamim. Meet me at the penthouse tomorrow morning. We need to talk. The coldness in those words made her stomach drop. This wasn't the man who'd proposed to her yesterday, who'd looked at her like she was his entire world. This was the voice of someone who'd made a decision, and Katie felt sick knowing what that decision probably was. Morning came too quickly, and Katie left Juno with her mother and a trusted nurse, taking a cab to Tamim's penthouse with her heart in her throat. When she walked in, she found him standing by the windows overlooking Seoul, his back rigid, his shoulders tense. Tamim, she said softly, and when he turned around, the look on his face destroyed her. His eyes were cold, distant, like he'd locked away every feeling he'd ever had for her. I've made my decision, he said, his voice flat and emotionless. My father is right. I can't build a legitimate empire while being tied to someone who makes me vulnerable. You and Juno will return to America tomorrow. I've already arranged for $5 million to be deposited in an account for you. Enough to give him a good life, the best education, everything he needs. Each word was a knife to Katie's heart, but she refused to cry, refused to break down. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't love me, she demanded, her voice shaking. Look at me and say it, Tamim. Tamim is following Yuna's plan, but the pain in Katie's eyes is killing him. Can he maintain the lie? And with Diana Volkov arriving in Seoul, a dangerous game has begun that could destroy them all. Tamim forced himself to meet Katie's eyes, every muscle in his body screaming at him to pull her close and confess everything, but Yuna's words echoed in his mind. The wolf has to believe the breakup is real, or he'll never let his guard down. So Tamim did the hardest thing he'd ever done. He lied to the woman he loved. I don't love you enough to give up everything I've built, he said, his voice like ice even as his heart shattered with each word. What we had was intense, but it wasn't worth sacrificing my empire for. My father made me see that clearly. He watched Katie's face crumble, watched tears finally spill down her cheeks, and he wanted to die. You're a good mother, Katie. Take the money, give Juno a beautiful life in America, and forget about me. That's what's best for everyone. Katie stood frozen for a long moment, and then something shifted in her expression. The heartbreak transforming into something harder, stronger, more dangerous. She wiped her tears away with shaking hands and stepped closer to him, her voice low and fierce. You're a coward, Tamim. Your father isn't making you choose. You're choosing the easy path because you're terrified of being happy, terrified of having something real that can't be controlled or bought. You think I don't see what you're doing? Katie continued, her voice rising with emotion. You're protecting yourself, protecting your precious empire, while throwing away the family who actually loves you. Well, fine. I'll take your blood money and leave, but don't you dare pretend this is for our benefit. This is all for you. She pulled off the engagement ring he'd given her and placed it on the table between them with a sharp click that echoed through the silent penthouse. I hope your empire keeps you warm at night, because you just destroyed the only real thing you ever had. As she turned to leave, Tamin's carefully constructed facade almost cracked. He almost called out to her, almost confessed the plan, almost begged her to understand. But then he remembered the wolf's network of spies, the cameras and listening devices that could be anywhere, and he forced himself to stay silent. He watched Katie walk out of his penthouse, out of his life, carrying his heart with her, and prayed that when this was all over, she'd somehow forgive him. What neither of them knew was that Juno had snuck away from the hospital with his grandmother's nurse, wanting to surprise his parents, and the little boy had heard everything through the penthouse's cracked doorway, including his father's cruel rejection. Juno heard his father's betrayal, and his innocent heart is broken. But the child has his own plan, one that will put him in terrible danger. Meanwhile, Diana Volkov has landed in Seoul, and the wolf's reckoning is about to begin. Katie returned to the hospital with tears she couldn't stop, only to find her mother's room in chaos. Nurses rushing around, her mother pale and struggling to breathe, and the nurse who was supposed to be watching Juno standing there wringing her hands apologetically. I'm so sorry, Miss Katie. He said he was just going to the bathroom, but when I checked, he was gone. I've looked everywhere in the hospital. I've called security. Katie's grief transformed instantly into pure terror. How long has he been missing? She demanded, her voice sharp with panic. Almost 40 minutes, the nurse admitted, and Katie felt her world tilting. Juno was out there somewhere, a 3-year-old boy alone in a massive city, and she had no idea where to even begin looking. She immediately called Tamin, her pride forgotten in the face of her son's disappearance, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She tried again and again, each unanswered ring making her more frantic, until finally she left a desperate message. Juno is missing. I don't care what happened between us. He's your son, and I need you. Please, Tamin, please help me find him. What Katie didn't know was that Juno had taken a taxi. The kind driver fooled by the little boy's tears and the story that his daddy worked at the big warehouse by the water where the boxes are. Juno had heard his father mention the old warehouse to someone on the phone, and in his 3-year-old logic, he decided that if he could just talk to his daddy, he could make everything better. He could tell his daddy that mommy cried all the way home, that she loved him so much, that families were supposed to stay together like in his favorite storybooks. The taxi dropped him off at an industrial complex near the Han River, and Juno walked through the massive warehouses with his stuffed elephant clutched tight, looking for his father and not understanding that he'd just walked into the most dangerous place in Seoul. Inside the main warehouse, the wolf was meeting with his top lieutenants, discussing his plans for Tamin's future, when one of his men rushed in with urgent news. Sir, security cameras picked up a small child entering the complex alone, a mixed-race boy, maybe 3 or 4 years old. The wolf's eyes narrowed dangerously. Show me the footage, he commanded, and when the image of Juno appeared on the screen, a slow, calculating smile spread across his face. Well, it seems my grandson has come to visit me after all. How convenient. Juno has walked into the wolf's trap, and time is running out. Will Tamin reach his son before his father uses the child as leverage? Katie is about to make a desperate alliance with Diana Volkov that changes everything. Katie was about to call the police when a black limousine pulled up to the hospital entrance, and a woman stepped out, tall, elegant, with platinum blonde hair and eyes like blue ice. Diana Volkov walked through the hospital corridor like she owned it, and when she reached Katie, she spoke with quiet authority. Mr. Choi informed me of your situation. Your son is missing, and I believe I know where he is. Katie didn't care about pride or consequences anymore. She grabbed Diana's arm desperately. Where? Please tell me where my baby is. Diana's expression softened slightly, something almost maternal flickering across her face. The wolf has security at the old warehouse district. If your son was looking for his father and overheard that location, that's where he'd go, right into the monster's den. She pulled out her phone, showing Katie live footage from her own surveillance team. My people have been watching that warehouse for 2 days, waiting for the right moment to move. 10 minutes ago, they spotted a small child entering the complex alone. Katie's knees buckled, and Diana caught her, holding her steady with surprising gentleness. I have a daughter, Katie. She's 15 now, safe in Moscow with her grandmother. If anyone took her, I'd burn the world down to get her back. So I understand what you're feeling, and I'm going to help you." Within 15 minutes, Katie was in Diana's limousine racing toward the warehouse district, her phone finally connecting to Tameen, who answered with panic in his voice. "Katie, I got your message. Where are you?" "I've been searching everywhere for Juno." Katie's voice was cold with fury and fear. "He's at your father's warehouse, Tameen. Our 3-year-old son walked into a den of criminals because he heard you mention that place, probably thinking he could find you and fix our broken family. And where were you? Making your choice between us and your precious empire." There was a long, painful silence. Then Tameen's voice came back broken and desperate. "Katie, listen to me very carefully. Everything I said this morning was a lie. I was trying to protect you by making my father think I'd chosen him, but I never stopped." Katie hung up before he could finish, because Diana's driver had just pulled up to the warehouse gates, and through the grimy windows, she could see movement inside. Diana squeezed her hand. "My team is in position. We're going to get your son back, and then the wolf is going to pay for 20 years of sins. Are you ready?" Katie thought about her sweet Juno, probably scared and crying, and she nodded with a fierce determination she didn't know she possessed. "Let's end this. 2 women wronged by the wolf are about to storm his fortress. But inside, the wolf has Juno and a plan that will force Tameen to make an impossible choice." Tameen arrived at the warehouse at the same moment as Diana's team, and the sight of Katie standing beside the Russian crime boss made his blood run cold. Not because he feared Diana, but because he understood instantly that Katie had made her own dangerous alliance. Their eyes met across the parking lot, and the hurt and betrayal in her gaze cut him deeper than any knife ever could. "Katie, please, let me explain," he started, but she turned away from him, following Diana's team as they moved toward the warehouse entrance with military precision. Inside, they found the wolf sitting calmly in the center of the empty space, and on his lap, looking small and terrified but unharmed, was Juno. The little boy's face lit up when he saw his parents. "Mommy, Daddy, I found Grandpa," he called out innocently, not understanding the tension crackling through the air like electricity. The wolf smiled, his hand resting gently on Juno's shoulder in a gesture that looked protective, but felt like a threat. "What a lovely family reunion," he said smoothly. "Diana Volkov, after all these years, you're still as beautiful as ever. And even more foolish, walking into my territory with a handful of men thinking you can threaten me." Diana stepped forward, her weapon trained steadily on the wolf, her voice like ice. "Let the child go, old man. Your war is with me, not with innocent babies." The wolf laughed, but his eyes remained cold and calculating. "Ah, but this child is leverage, the only thing keeping my disappointing son from completely betraying the family. Isn't that right, Tameen?" All eyes turned to Tameen, who stood frozen, his carefully constructed plan falling apart around him. Katie looked at him with desperate hope warring with suspicion, and he knew this was the moment. He could keep lying and maybe save them all, or he could tell the truth and risk everything. "Father, Juno has nothing to do with our family business," Tameen said carefully, taking a step forward. "He's 3 years old. Whatever punishment you think I deserve, whatever lesson you want to teach me, leave him out of it." The wolf's smile widened. "Oh, but he has everything to do with it, son. This child represents your weakness, your desire to be ordinary, your betrayal of everything I built. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to choose, right now, in front of everyone. Take the boy and walk out with that woman, and I'll destroy every legitimate business you own and make sure you're hunted for the rest of your life. Or give him to me, let me raise him properly as my heir while you take your rightful place at my side, and I'll let Katie live in peace with enough money to forget you ever existed." Juno, sensing the tension, began to cry, reaching his little arms toward Katie, who stood trembling with maternal fury and helplessness. The wolf has forced the ultimate choice, but he's underestimated the love of a mother and the cunning of a betrayed woman. Katie is about to do something that will shock everyone. Before anyone could move, before Tameen could answer his father's cruel ultimatum, Katie did something no one expected. She walked forward, past Diana's men, past their weapons, directly toward the wolf with her hands raised and empty. "Stop," Diana hissed, but Katie ignored her, her eyes locked on her son's tear-stained face. Every instinct in Tameen screamed to pull her back, but something in her expression, fierce and determined and utterly fearless, made him hold his position. Katie stopped a few feet from the wolf and spoke, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "You talk about legacy and power and family honor, but you know what I see? I see a lonely old man so terrified of being forgotten that he'd rather destroy his son's happiness than admit he failed as a father." The wolf's eyes flashed dangerously, but Katie pressed on, her courage growing with every word. "Taming isn't weak because he loves us. He's stronger than you ever were because he's trying to break the cycle of violence and loneliness that destroyed your life." And Juno, she looked at her son with such pure love it made even the wolf pause. "He doesn't need your empire or your blood-stained legacy. He needs a father who shows up, who holds him when he cries, who teaches him that real power comes from protecting people, not controlling them." The warehouse had gone completely silent, everyone transfixed by this young black woman standing unarmed before one of Asia's most dangerous crime lords, speaking truths no one else dared voice. The wolf stared at Katie for a long moment, and something shifted in his weathered face. Not softness exactly, but recognition, as if he was seeing someone from his past in her courage. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly, his hand loosening slightly on Juno's shoulder. "My wife, Taming's mother. She spoke to me like this once, with the same fire in her eyes, telling me I'd lose my son if I didn't change. I didn't listen, and she was right. I lost them both, her to illness and him to fear and resentment." He looked at Taming with something that might have been regret. "But you're wrong about one thing, Miss Katie. I'm not trying to destroy my son. I'm trying to save him from making the mistakes I made, choosing love, and then watching it destroy you when this violent world takes it away." The vulnerability in his admission shocked everyone, but before anyone could respond, the warehouse doors exploded inward, and Mr. Choi rushed in with a team of federal agents, shouting, "Everyone freeze! This warehouse is surrounded." In the chaos that followed, Katie lunged forward and grabbed Juno from the wolf's lap, clutching her son to her chest as gunfire erupted and Diana's team engaged with the wolf's hidden security forces. The standoff has exploded into chaos, and in the smoke and confusion, the wolf has vanished. But he's left behind something that will change everything. A confession recorded by Mr. Choi that could free Taming forever or destroy him. When the smoke cleared and the gunfire stopped, Katie found herself crouched behind a concrete pillar with Juno wrapped in her arms, both of them shaking but miraculously unharmed. Taming was beside them in an instant, his hands frantically checking them for injuries, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," he kept repeating, and Katie wanted to stay angry at him, wanted to push him away for the pain he'd caused, but seeing him like this, broken and terrified and so completely human, made her defenses crumble. "We're okay," she whispered, letting him pull them both into his arms. "We're okay, Taming." Across the warehouse, Mr. Choi was coordinating with the federal agents while Diana Volkov stood calmly, her weapon lowered, watching the wolf's men being arrested one by one. But the wolf himself had vanished in the chaos, escaping through tunnels he'd built decades ago for exactly this kind of emergency. Yuna appeared from the shadows where she'd been watching everything unfold, and she approached Taming with a small recording device in her hand. "It's all here," she said quietly. "Father's confession about his regrets, his admission of past crimes. Everything we need to prove you were operating under duress for years. Combined with Choi's evidence, this can set you free from the family business forever." Taming stared at the recorder, then at Katie and Juno, then back at his half-sister with anguish written across his face. "But using this means sending him to prison, maybe for life. Despite everything, he's still my father, still the man who raised me." The weight of that choice hung heavy in the air until Katie gently touched his cheek, making him look at her. "Taming, your father gave you an impossible choice today, him or us. Now you have to make a real choice. Do you want to be free, truly free to build the life you've been dreaming of, or do you want to stay trapped by loyalty to a man who's been manipulating you your entire life?" Tears fell freely down Taming's face as he looked at his son, then at the woman he loved, then at the recording device that held his father's voice and his own future. "I choose you," he said, his voice breaking. "I choose Juno, I choose Katie, I choose freedom even if it means betraying him. Because you're right, I can't break the cycle if I keep making excuses for it." He handed the recorder to Mr. Choi, and with that simple gesture, sealed his father's fate and liberated himself from the empire that had been both his birthright and his prison. Diana approached them, her expression softer than Katie had ever seen it. "Your son is brave, and so are you," she said to Katie. "The wolf will resurface eventually, men like him always do. But until then, you've won something precious. Time to build your family in peace. The immediate danger has passed, but at what cost?" As Katie, Taming, and Juno try to rebuild their life, a final twist awaits that will leave everyone breathless. 3 months later, Katie stood in her mother's hospital room, holding her hand as the machines beeped their final rhythms. Her mother had held on long enough to see Katie and Taming finally married in a simple ceremony with just Juno, Yuna, and Mr. Choi as witnesses. "You did good, baby girl," her mother whispered, her voice barely audible. "You fought for your family and won. I can rest now." Katie sobbed as her mother took her last breath, and Taming held her through the grief while Juno, not fully understanding death but sensing the sadness, wrapped his small arms around both his parents. The funeral was beautiful and heartbreaking, and as they laid her mother to rest, Katie felt both the pain of loss and the gratitude for the time they'd had. Life slowly found a new rhythm. Taming's legitimate businesses flourished without his father's shadow hanging over them. Juno started preschool and made friends easily with his bright smile and curious nature, and Katie enrolled in graduate school to finish the degree she'd abandoned 4 years ago. They bought a house with a yard where Juno could play, and for the first time in years, Katie felt something close to peace. The wolf remained a ghost, vanished completely with warrants for his arrest across 3 continents, and Katie tried not to think about when or if he'd return. Then one evening, as Katie was putting Juno to bed, her son said something that made her blood run cold. "Mommy, the nice old man at the park today said to tell you and Daddy that family always comes home eventually." Katie's hands froze on the blanket she was tucking around him. "What old man, baby? What did he look like?" Juno yawned sleepily. "He had Daddy's eyes. And he gave me this." He pulled out a small wooden box from under his pillow, and when Katie opened it with shaking hands, she found a note in elegant handwriting. "I've been watching from afar, seeing how you've built your little paradise. Congratulations on your peace. You've earned it. But remember, dear Katie, I'm not in prison, not dead, and not finished. I'm simply waiting for the right moment to reclaim what's mine. Tell my son I'm proud of his courage, even if it was misguided. And tell my grandson that his grandfather looks forward to knowing him properly when the time is right. Consider this a warning and a promise. The wolf always protects his pack, even when they don't realize they need protecting. You'll see me again when you least expect it. And when you do, you'll understand that some legacies can never truly be escaped. Sleep well, daughter-in-law. We're family now, whether you like it or not." Katie's scream brought Taming running, and as he read the note, his face went pale. Outside their perfect suburban home, a black car sat in the shadows, and inside it, the wolf watched his son's house with patient, calculating eyes, a slight smile playing on his lips. Oh no! The wolf has been watching them this entire time, and he just made contact with Juno. Is he planning revenge or something even more twisted? What do you think the wolf wants now? Is he truly a threat, or does he actually want to protect his family in his own twisted way? Drop your theories in the comments. Should Katie and Taming run, fight back, or try to make peace with the wolf? And what did he mean by when you realize you need protecting? Is there an even bigger danger coming? If you want part 3 of this story to find out what the wolf is really planning, smash that like button, share this video with everyone, and subscribe with notifications on. We need 5,000 likes to continue this story. Can we do it? Let me know in the comments what you think should happen next. See you in part 3. If you want it.